Microsoft desktop products, if you install them on the Citrix farm, which is a common configuration, these days especially, because everybody works from home, you have to set up some sort of remote access of your employees to your service, unless you do it through Office 365 and SharePoint and OneDrive in a completely M365-centric solution. You probably have some element of a legacy infrastructure. You have Citrix service, and there's Microsoft Project or Microsoft Visio installed on that Citrix farm. You're in trouble. In 2013, I came to the UK. I had to deal with a few cases with Microsoft pursuing penalties for having some Microsoft desktop software installed in a Citrix farm. Why penalties? It seems simple, but it's not. If you install a Microsoft desktop piece, Project Visio, Microsoft Office on a Citrix farm, and you give access to a certain group of your users, which usually how it's configured. You have an Active Directory group or a set of Active Directory groups, and you allow that subset of users to have access to that piece of Microsoft desktop software on a Citrix farm. This is how it's usually controlled, per user. Why? Because it's logical and it's easy. You just limit the number of users that can access to the Citrix farm. The problem with that is that those desktop pieces of Microsoft software, the traditional ones, they require a license per each client device. You don't buy one license for that copy in the Citrix farm. You have to license every end device that connects to that Citrix farm. And Microsoft's default position is you have to license every single device that has an ability, that has a potential to access that piece of software. What they're referring to is that you need to assign a license before you use a piece of software. When you authorize the device, when you give even a theoretical possibility for a device to access a piece of software on the Citrix farm, they say they must be already pre-licensed. So it must already have license, because it can, in theory, access that piece of software at any time. And when you limit that per user, you effectively authorize every device that that user may potentially take and access that piece of software in the Citrix farm. What does it mean in any organization? I have this laptop. This is assigned to me. I take it home, I work on it, and I access that piece of software in the Citrix farm remotely. If this laptop is assigned the license, it's licensed. If it's not assigned the license, it's not licensed to access that Citrix copy of Project and Visio. What if it breaks? I may be given a different laptop. That laptop must be already pre-licensed. Usually there's no control. You may say, yeah, we have control. We know what user uses which laptop. Do you? You will need to prove that you have that control, that you have a very strict one-to-one enforced link between users and devices. Otherwise, if you ask IT people, but can I take this laptop and access that piece of software? Yes, you can. Can I take that laptop, that desktop, that client? Can I use an iPad when I'm on premises through Wi-Fi to access that piece of software? Yes, you can. In that case, you have an unlimited number of devices that may access a piece of software that is licensed per client device. So you have that one copy of Project, and you have 10 people authorized to access it. But in theory, they may use 10,000 devices, 1 million devices. There's always a reasonable limit. Microsoft is not SAP. They're not going to charge you for every single device in the world. Unfortunately, especially now with the COVID situation and people having to work from home, this has become even more widely abused. And one of the things that I hear is, but you must understand, there's common sense. Only these 10 people will be able to access this. The whole dialogue falls to that whole discussion about how many people are authorized. Again, I repeat that. These licenses, the Microsoft desktop licenses, are not people licenses, they're device licenses. Yes, you have limited that to 10 people. You didn't limit the devices. Recently, I had a quick chat with a lawyer in the United States. That lawyer mentioned that these are easily legally disputed cases. Maybe that's easy for that lawyer, but again, you have to go into a legal dispute of proving to Microsoft that you have a reasonable number of licenses, enough licenses to cover for all of your reasonable situations. It is a problem. How do you solve this? Well, the easiest way is to get rid of that solution. Is it easy for you? Can you afford that? Can you really take that Citrix farm and take it offline and tell everybody use Office 365? You may have some compatibility issues or other issues. There's a reason why it's there. And you know where the problems usually are. Even if you remove production farms, there will be one or two servers deployed just in case. Oh, it's a legacy solution. Nobody's using it anymore. It's there. It is a risk. Some server deployed for some application some time ago, not a part of the main Citrix farm. Do one thing today. Do it for yourselves. Do some sort of an inventory of all your servers and find all the pieces of Microsoft desktop software on those servers today. And then in the second half of the day, when you've got that inventory, write down against every single piece. Don't miss a single one, because even one is a problem. Write down why it's there. What does it do there? If you don't know, delete it. If it supports a piece of legacy software, write it down. If it's your main production Citrix farm, write it down. And then start getting rid of what you don't need. The second thing you may review is deploy in Office 365. Then that issue with devices disappears because Office 365 is licensed per user. The other thing you could do is, if you have any tool that can monitor and count devices that are connecting to the server and keep logs of that, keep logs for a year, 2 years, just start today and keep it forever. Because what you then can do when it comes to a dispute, which is much beyond the simple licensing dispute, when you start talking about potential legal cases, even if you use a common sense approach to this, if an auditor starts insisting that you need to have 10,000 licenses, as an example, but then you have a tool that meters on every server, you would have to prove it, by the way. Again, you have to prove it. On every server where that piece of software is installed, you have some sort of logging of, pay attention to this, devices, unique devices that have accessed that piece of software. And then you can prove that during years and months, and even during the last year where everybody moved to working from home, there is some reasonable number of devices, unique devices per rolling 90 days period that connect to that piece of software. Say, then for the purpose of an example, is never above 200 devices. And you have 200 licenses to cover for that maximum number, even if it's spilled just a bit over 200. You're still in a very good place. You have a reasonable and provable situation. Dear Microsoft, we do have a tool that let us monitor if we may potentially become non-compliant. And if that's the case, we immediately buy necessary licenses. And we usually have a surplus. When you can demonstrate that, you have a reasonable argument. Not just common sense. Not just, oh, we have these users in an AD group. That doesn't work. Something that you can use as a food for thought, as something to prove your actual situation. I'll repeat. Go back now to your infrastructure. Do some inventory. You can take any inventory, because for Microsoft desktop pieces, even the worst software asset management tools can do that. As long as all your devices are covered, any sort of inventory will do for Microsoft desktop pieces. Look at all your servers, find Microsoft Office, Microsoft Project, Microsoft Visio. These three. Traditional, not Office 365 ones, the traditional ones, which will still be there. I almost guarantee that you have at least one somewhere. And write down against every found copy of that software on servers, what does it do there? And think if you can remove that. When I came to the UK in 2013, there was a customer who was almost had to pay £2.5 million for 2 copies, 1 video, 1 project on the Citrix farm. There was a commercial resolution. What does it mean, commercial resolution? It means you still need to pay them something. You probably are not willing to pay right now. They came for your money, they will take them. Don't give an auditor an option to have an upper hand.
If you like what you've just seen, please send me a connection request on LinkedIn. The link is in the description. And please subscribe to this channel so you do not miss any of the future updates and any of the future live shows that I upload here, at least weekly. Thank you, and safe with knowledge of Microsoft licensing.